Okay. Wow. What a crowd. So, without further ado, I want to introduce our speaker. I'm going to save our announcements for the end while you're doing your evaluation, I hope. We do use those evaluations to identify topics that you're interested in and to help us with our performance. So we really encourage you to fill those out for us. This is an evaluated program. It goes into the state and we look at it statistically. So please take 5 minutes and do your evaluation. It's not hard. Okay. Is he there? Yes, is he over there? Well, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Andrew King. He is a very popular speaker for us and an assistant professor and horticulturist at Texas A&M AgriLife Research and Extension Center in Overton. And he brings just a wealth of research experience, his multi-generational nursery experience, and a deep understanding of our local climate and soils, which makes him an ideal speaker for us. So without further ado, he's going to talk to us about waking up your garden, starting for a successful vegetable harvest. And here we go.
Thank you, Gina. Well, howdy. I don't have a mic stand very often. This is great. This is like, I feel like I'm a stand-up comedian or something. One of the things that I realized as I came in is that there may be some confusion in advertising. The drawing for the guns and the car will be after. I'm thankful that you guys come. It makes me feel good. And the fact is people are like, well, people always come to your talks. I said, you put me first. They're so hungry, literally. They want to grow something. You know, it doesn't take a whole lot to get people here. And so I'm going to keep coming in January if it's all right with you guys. This is fun. Thank you all for being here. My name is Andrew King. I am, as I used to tell my students, I'm an acquired taste. Many of them never acquired it. It's all right. It doesn't really bother me all that much. But one of the things that I love to do is to make my title different than the one that they gave me, which waking up, that would have been good. That would have been a lot of fun to talk about, but I didn't do that. I rather said, let's title it this: Vegetable Gardens, Plant Trials, and Life. You say, what do you mean? I said, yeah, that way we can talk about anything we want to talk about. I might have told you all this. Now I've probably told you all everything. I'm sorry. But I taught a course. The only course that I ever actually designed and put together was called Wild Edible Cultivated and Poisonous Herbs. It's supposed to be medicinal plants, because the College of Medicine will not let you use the word medicine. And so I had to come up with some other title that was a little more descriptive. And in that class, the first one, I had this girl. She sat right here. And nothing against this place. I've had people that sat right there that didn't ask this kind of question. But she asked this question. She said, what's this class really all about? We're about four or 5 weeks in. I said, well, about what she said, well, that's just not what I thought it was going to be. And I said, well, what did you think it was going to be? And she said, well, I wasn't sure. I have no idea how to solve that problem for you. And by now, you know, after I talk like this, stream of consciousness or whatever, you don't know what we're going to talk about either. And so let's talk about petunias and pansies. No, I'm just kidding. Let's talk about vegetable gardens. As I mentioned, she mentioned I come from a long line of nursery professionals, and I'm very proud of that. I love the fact that for 4 generations, this is all we've ever known how to do. And I grew up out there in Tenaha, and this place is, we closed it last year. People said, oh, eventually that's going to go away and I can actually make some jokes about it, but it's still too close to the bone for people to do that. That's my sweet mama right there. She's the hardest worker I've ever met in my life, and she still works hard and taking care of her grandkids now. So I'm really proud of that for her. Growing up out there was great. I was a Camellia fan from the word go, and it's just a fantastic place to be. I went to Stephen F. Austin State University. I'm a 3rd generation lumberjack. And I'm proud of that. Absolutely love that place. This is Dave Creech, and I used to love him. But we'll talk about that more. He taught me how to breed plants. That's an important distinction. And this is Amorphophallus titanum. That thing's about 3 foot tall and smells like a dead cow. And anyway, we were sitting there cutting holes in it so that we could fertilize it. And that's me right there. And the ladies over in Overton, the only thing they ever say about this picture is not what an incredible Amorphophallus titanum, not what an incredible plant breeder you were, but what incredible mutton chops you had. It didn't work, a bunch of nuts. But anyway, I was real thrilled to be down there. As I mentioned, coming from this long line of nursery professionals, but also inspirational people. My dad, I think, was pretty much an inspirational kind of a guy. He couldn't really get away from a talk with him without either feel like you should be doing better or feel like you're going to go do better. And so I really appreciate that about him. He used to say he thought he could root number 2 pencils. This is propagation right here now. You ever try it? Well, I'm going to tell you, I've done it before, but that eraser right there is hard to propagate. But the fact of the matter is that this is a joke. Didn't really happen. If you go home and try it, it does happen, holler at me, but it's a joke. But the thing that he wound up realizing is that he used to say this because he thought he could root anything in the world, propagate anything in the world, because he was really good at it and he tried. And then as he grew older and he had more friends telling him, well, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that, he got to be a worse propagator, all right? And so it kind of reminded me of this. I was down in College Station right before I had already been hired at Overton, and I was down there, and I realized that this hort manual, this propagation manual right here, was the one that I actually wrote. All right, so that's got my name on it down there, and they're still using it. I thought, well, that was interesting. Still waiting on the royalties on that deal, but it's okay. But these kids were so thrilled to death, they said, Dr. King, can we have your autograph? Yeah, yes, absolutely. And in my youthful exuberance of 18 months ago, I thought, these people, I'm a rock star. These people love me. And then I didn't realize that they had added a few stipulations on there. On that manual right there, you can't see it, it says, if you are by some fluke, chicanery, or tomfoolery able to obtain the signature of the author of this manual, you will receive an automatic A for this use. You gotta look, it's fine print. It's there. So my point is, what? This lady right here out in Georgia, all right, she is rooting this tree right here. Anybody know what that tree is? It's a red oak of some sort, all right? Now, I was taught, can't root oaks. Don't worry about it, don't try it, don't mess with it. You know why she can? Because she thinks she can. All right, this is the Guy Clark approach. I don't know if people know this guy right here, Texas songwriter. He wrote a song called The Cape. And in that song, there's a little boy that goes up on the roof, all right? And he's going to jump down. And the last line of the song says, he did not know he could not fly, and so he did. All right? And it reminds me that, hey, when you're that age or when you feel that age, it doesn't matter what age you are, horticulturally, that's where we all are right now in January. We think we can fly, right? And so, when you go from this place where it's like, I don't think I can do it, that's like August. So right now, we've all got our cake in a little bit. You can say what you want to, that's not a cake, but it's all right. It's the closest I can get. All right, let's talk about vegetable gardening. That's what we're here for. And then eventually, depending on how fast I go, we are eventually going to get to a little bit of what we do out in Overton, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that because we had great trials last year. I'd like to actually give you some results from those trials. We do have results from those trials, and so that's a fun thing. All right. I'm going to skip through some of these slides here in a second, but somebody tell me, why in the world would you grow vegetables at home? It tastes better than what? All right. I agree with you as long as you're actually making the vegetables at home. I know a lot of people that take their plants home and didn't take care of them, didn't make any vegetables, and those in the grocery store actually taste better than the ones that didn't make. All right? I'm just picking. That's a really good point. They taste better. What else? More pure.
Well, you can control what you're
Yeah, we
doing.
know what we're putting on. I know what I'm putting on or what I'm not. What else?
Better varieties.
Better varieties. All right.
It's gratifying.
Feels good.
Good therapy.
It's good therapy. It feels good. I like this. Man. What else?
Convenient.
Convenient. I need to come garden with you. All right. There's a million answers, and whichever answer it is that you choose is your right answer. All right. But the fact is there's a lot of things we need to be doing before we start. All right. Before we actually get out there and put a plan in the ground. And that's what we're going to talk about today. 37% of the U.S. households garden. By the way, these statistics are out of date because something called COVID happened. All right, so you can pretty much ramp these things up by about 20 or 30%. But about 40% of U.S. households garden before COVID. 80% of the gardeners are college educated. That puts you into a good educated crowd. 86% of gardeners grow tomatoes. All right, you know what's funny? Less than 86% of the United States likes tomatoes. I got a friend, hey, you grow them, but you don't like them? I got a friend that's got the same affliction you have down in College Station. He is like growing the most beautiful tomatoes you ever saw in your life. You wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole. The average food-size garden is 600 square foot, not very big, but it's big enough to do some damage. I mean, in a good way. $2.5 billion spent on food gardens and $21 billion return on investment. Nobody mentioned the fact that it can be cheaper, right? That's because you guys have got grander things in mind. A lot of times people say, well, it's not cheap. And I like to have a lot of, and the fact is that that does work, again, if you actually make vegetables. Otherwise, it's not a very good return on investment. It's about 10 times return on investment. So we think it's a good thing to do. This is all what you said, sense of accomplishment, potential savings. We want to know what's on our food. It's fresh from garden to table. All right, and exercise. Hey, I'd like to shed a few pounds or whatever the case is, and so that's a good thing for you to consider going out there and doing that work. This is all saying the exact same thing that we said just then. All right, well, we're going to talk about tomatoes toward the end of our time, but I want you to realize that the same tomato that comes from the same plant that I get one from today and tomorrow. All right, I harvest tomatoes on a Wednesday and a Thursday. I bring a tomato in from that plant on Wednesday. You say, this is the best tomato I've ever had in my life. And you say, this is trash. Tomorrow I bring that same tomato in. You say, this is fantastic. You say, I liked it better yesterday. Right? And so a lot of this has to do with when we harvest. Right? You have control over when you harvest. And I like, for instance, there's a lot of fruit that I actually like when they're not totally ripe. They're a little bit more acidic. All right? Vegetables, I like them to be good and sweet. You can look at my figure and realize that I've got some interest in making sure my food's good and sweet. Now, another reason why you want to grow them in your yard is because this is what the typical life of a tomato in the grocery store. And I'm not trying to offend any grocery store owners here, but nonetheless, this is what happens to those rascals. They're oftentimes depicted in California. We have a whole lot more folks who are growing locally and putting them into our stores, and I think that's a great thing. But forever, we're growing them in California or some other place outside of the U.S. They're hauled by a truck to a package shed. They're dumped into chlorine water. They're sorted on a conveyor belt. They're packed into cardboard boxes, loaded onto pallets. They're gassed so they can ripen or stop ripening depending on what's happening. They're loaded onto a refrigerated truck. They take them for 1,000 miles somewhere. Unload them in a wholesale warehouse, sort them into local loads, haul them to the grocery store, and then there's some kid over there that's rolling them around, making sure that they're good, and they'll roll true, and then they put them back up there, and then you come back and you buy it, and you take it home, and you think, this is good, fresh vegetable. All right. Now, is that true for everything? Absolutely not. As I mentioned, I think we're way better off than we used to be in terms of growing locally and selling locally, but none of it's going to be any better than you growing in the backyard, all right? So I think that's a fantastic thing. Now, somebody said here, you don't like tomatoes. I'm not going to pick on you all day long, just for a while, all right? Now, have we tried all of them? The answer is never, right? Because there's always new ones coming out. And just think about this. I mean, most people are thinking tomato. They only think that right there. the only thing they considered. But I remember Daddy grew a tomato called banana legs one time. I thought it was the most fantastic thing I'd ever seen in my life. He grew 50 1-gallon pots of banana legs tomato. They were about that long. They're about that wide, looked like a Roma, all right? And I thought, yellow tomato, this is fantastic. At the end of the season, we had 49 of them left. Nobody wanted that thing, right? Because in Tenahall, Texas, that was a tomato, and that ain't, all right? Well, you can try that one. But these other things, we're not going to, but just realize that there's so many different tomatoes out there, and so, you know, finding what you like. You mentioned varieties, and that's such an important aspect. We'll talk about varieties when we get toward the end of our time. Calories, in terms of counting calories and not calorie pairs, but in terms of counting actual calories and trying to lose some weight, and go out there and exercise. Gardening is a great thing to do. It really is. It depends on what you're doing. But if you get out there and you push that lawnmower around a little bit, or go out there and cut that stuff and clean that area manually, you will not have to go to the gym. Arm day is officially over. All right? Now, planting your vegetable garden. How many people really plan their vegetable garden? Okay. I don't rate. I'm going to take my hand down because I do not. All right. What do? Oh, I got this plant right here. I'll put it over here. I'm just going to straight up tell you. I'm telling you to do something that I'm not willing to do. All right. But this is the way you should do it. All right. In order for you to really be a successful, really good vegetable gardener, you need to plan that thing out. You need to figure out what it is that, you know, are you going to put some corn out there? What's that going to do? Cast some shade that you might not have considered before. Where am I going to put that one? We'll put it over there where it's not going to bother anything, where all of my shorter plants are going to make sure they get plenty of sun, because what is full sun? How many hours is full sun?
All day. 6 to 8.
It's like a wave. It's great. Great. All right. We would say somewhere between 6 to 8, which you all have said, because you've read, this is good. But David Creech gave me the best answer I've ever heard on that. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, what's full sun? He said, full sun's full sun. And I thought, that's a good answer. So full sun is as much as you possibly can get it. Planting quantity is consistent with your needs, all right? If you're a food bank and you're having trouble keeping up with it, keep growing. But if you love to give your produce away and you can do it, rock and roll. But if you're just starting, this is the first time you've ever vegetable gardened, or you know, hey, I've been at work in a corporate job for a long, long time, and I just couldn't wait to get out there and start a vegetable garden. An acre is probably a bit much, right? We want to really kind of start out in a very conservative place. Plant realistic quantities consistent with your ability. Select the ideal garden site. There's your full sun. Start small, all right? Don't try to grow everything, and optimize your garden for seasonal weather cycles. We've already talked about these things, so I'm going to skip through some of this stuff because I got so many slides it would dizzy you if you realized it right now. But one day, you'll realize we can get through it. 8 hours at least, that's full sun. Avoid proximity to trees or buildings. This is the Greg Grant, Jerry Parsons deal, where I've heard all my life people saying, hey, I can't grow tomatoes in my yard. I've done everything I can. I'm done. And Jerry said, well, what do you mean? You got them in full sun? He said, yes. He said, well, we'll be out there to check on these tomatoes. We'll come out tomorrow. They go out there, and these tomatoes are staked to an oak tree. All right? That's not full sun. It does not avoid proximity to trees. Choose well-drained soils. All right? How many people are raising their beds right now? All right? This is the thing. All of a sudden, I don't mean that all of a sudden, over the last 15 years or so. And I think it's great. I think it's absolutely great. It really sort of helps you to really refine what you actually want to grow and being really successful and efficient at that. But if you don't do that, realize that we have a lot of soils around that function well as bathtubs. All right, so we need to be very careful with that. If you've got sandy soils, don't cuss them, don't curse them. They are a blessing. All right, and I come from the land of sandy soils over there in deep East Texas, and so it's good. Avoid septic fields or aerobic sprinkler areas in terms of that being sprayed on your vegetables, you know, within a 2 to 3 week window before you. And I realize people say, "What are you talking about?" Listen, some people don't have a choice. And so just make sure that you're abiding by all those rules, because there's composting things that need to be happening there. Convenient access to water supply, yes, we actually have to water here. And rotate your garden if possible. Now, if you've got a small backyard, rotating your garden is oftentimes not possible. Can you still be successful? Absolutely. All right, there's some ways we'll try to talk about that. All right, preparing the soil. All right, for years and years and years, preparing the soil meant get out there and till it to death. And I still like to till the soil. I'm not going to lie to you, I still enjoy doing that part, but I realized that my daddy started training me from a young age not to over-till, all right, the substrate, the soils that we put into our containers. We had a mixing machine out there, and we put them in there, and he would not let me leave that thing in that mixing machine for longer than about 4.5 or 5 minutes. He was a stickler for that. Why? Because as I did that, those granules and the matrix of that soil broke down, right? And instead of having big blocks in the soil, what happens between big blocks in the soil? Air and water and all kinds of things can move, all right? After I continue to reduce that block down to the point where it's on a granular level, all of a sudden that air and that water is not going to move between those, and there's going to be so many more pore spaces that water and air and things are going to be excluded. All right? And air is your friend. Oxygen is your friend. Your plants need oxygen, just like you do. Not exactly the same way, but they do need it. All right, so I work for Texas A&M, and I realize I'm in video right now, so I'm going to say it this way. I'm contractually obligated to say you need to get a soil sample. All right? And doing it through Texas A&M would be a great way for you to get your soil sample done. There's another slide, by the way, because I can only go 40 slides without saying that. So I have to be careful about that. Add amendments is recommended, all right? Do we have great soils in East Texas? We do, all right? We live in God's part of Texas. And we have nice acidic soils, we've got good rain patterns generally, not always. But we still, when we're out there and we're gardening something like this right here, we still need some amendments. What is that amendment? I'm going to tell you right now, the secret to this whole talk is this right here, organic matter. All right? You want a silver bullet? You want the take home? I don't want you leaving right now because we got to have more fun. But organic matter is the answer. Whatever the question is that you asked today, organic matter is the answer. And what is that organic matter? Now that's a different, right? We can talk about different types of organic matter, but you can't put too much on your garden. You cannot put too much organic matter down. Now if you put it and it's too fresh, and perhaps you can exclude some, nitrogen and things like that, absolutely. But in terms of good aged organic matter, compost, good pine bark, peat moss, all of these things are really fantastic. Until things are nice and friable. All right, I'm going to give you a nice PhD technical answer on what is the right kind of texture for your garden soil. All right, you ready? Feel free to put out a hand. All right. All right. You grab that soil, you make a fist, you open the fist. What does that soil do? Stays the shape of your fist. You take the other hand, which is difficult with a microphone, and you do that. What does that soil do? It now has fallen back apart into different singular granules. And now you take your hand and you do this again, and that soil does what? It's the shape of your fist again. That's the perfect soil. All right? Feel free to give me a round of applause. I'll tell you what, you guys are too kind. All right, prepare your raised beds as needed and consider using drip irrigation. Why? Because overhead irrigation is a way we cause a lot of problems in terms of diseases and different pests and things, because they like water just like the plants do. All right? Tilling organic matter. Why? Because it is that silver bullet. It is. If you have soils that are too heavy, organic matter makes them lighter. If you have soils that are light, organic matter makes them heavier. If you have soils that won't hold on to fertilizer, they hold on to tons of fertilizer. If you have soils that there's not holding on to too much, but anyway, they will do whatever it is that you need done, and they don't even ask you what you need done. They just do it. All right. So what I'm saying is that organic matter is always a great answer. Food source for microorganisms. People say, hey, it's going to supply nutrients. That's true generally after a year or two or three. All right, so I actually had grad student friends that They were trying to grow tomatoes in the greenhouse there at Texas A&M. They said, what is my problem? My tomatoes are yellow, my plants are yellow, and they're not making any fruit, all right? You would say, they need fertilizer, because you know these things. I said, they need to be fertilized, and they said, what? Well, we put organic matter on them last week. That's not fertilization, all right? Over the course of years it is, but not on the short term, all right? How long you got a tomato in your yard? 12, 15 weeks. You know, you can keep it over the summer maybe, and then hope that you have some fall tomatoes. Most people are going to have them in there for that short period of time until it gets too hot. All right? And the fact of the matter is that if you do that right there, we want to get as much out of those rascals as possible. We are manipulators. All right? We are learning how to manipulate plants and get what it is that we need from them. And so that's a good thing. I used to tell my students, some of you are very natural at that, and other people need to learn the manipulative process. All right, preparing the soil. Here's your raised beds, or however you want to do it. These are some beds that we used to have for our students out there at A&M. Honestly, that soil needed to be worked over again, but you'll realize that you know, the better the soil, the more organic matter, the better gardener you're going to wind up being. We're not going to talk about this necessarily, except for to say this, that the perfect soil, and I want you to know that wherever you are that you're growing successfully and you're good at it, that's the perfect soil. All right? But if you just said, hey, what's the perfect soil? Well, we would call it this little part of this triangle right here. Loam. Loam. And what is loam? Well, the soil scientists have said loam is 40% sand, 40% silt, and 20% clay. Why? Because clay is a bully. All right? Our kids and our grandkids right now, the worst thing you can be is a bully. Clay is a bully. All right? We don't have any clays here. I don't mean you. But clay is a bully. What do I mean by that? Well, I was saying that look at the top of this triangle. It's dominated by clays. And the more clays you have, the more you have to actually amend soils and the more you have to deal with those things. Why? Because clay will hold on to a ton of water, but guess what it won't do? It won't give up that water often, and it won't give up the fertilizers that it holds on to. All right? So sands and silts are much better at that. The point is, it's just like everything else in life, a bit of balance is a nice thing. And loam is there for us in that way. Let me go skip through this. What an incredible thing. I just put this together for the talk. Had to go down to the beach and work on that. All right. This all says what? This all says that sand is really a very large particle that holds on to hardly any water or fertilizer. This says that clay is an extremely small particle that holds on to a lot of water and a lot of fertilizers. But guess what? Organic matter is even better. All right? Because it's the best of all those worlds. This is exactly what we've already talked about. This is peat. Anybody ever been to a peat bog?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, where?
Ireland.
Oh, I've been here too. That was fun, right? That was fun. I've got friends that go up to Canada. They work for soil companies, and they're up there all the time. And then over in Holland, there's lots of places. And so it's really incredible because those environments are so slowly breaking these materials down that they are incredibly rich, right? Those peats are so rich, and there's different kinds of peat moss, peat reed, sedge, and peat humus. But ultimately, peat is a great ingredient. The problem is that we're having a difficult time getting it at this point in time, and so we are looking for alternatives. But if you have peat and you can use it, and it's good for you, and you can use that as a great organic matter. Now, putting it onto a large garden is certainly not practical, but if you're doing raised beds, this is okay. I would not plant in straight peat. I would use peat as an ingredient, not the only thing. Mulch. What is mulch? Mulch is a great way to put organic matter down. All right? Year over year over year, if you're mulching, what are you doing? You are amending the soil by also then trying to keep weeds out. All right? By also then trying to manage temperatures and just doing an incredible job by also just making things really beautiful. I hate to say this out loud, especially, again, because I'm being videoed. Now I'm going to be blackmailed like this for the rest of my life. But the fact is that in the landscape process, and I realize this is not a landscape talk, but in the landscape process, I'm a plant guy. I love plants. All I care about is getting out there and finding the right plant and putting it in a cool place, and that's great. The fact is that the thing that makes this place look the most transformed is literally just putting that mulch down. I hate that. I despise it, but it's true. It's just like going out there and mowing. People say, boy, your yard looks so good. I say, yeah, but think about all that planting that I did, Anyway, mulching is important. We don't do a lot of living mulch in our landscapes, but nonetheless, you can still do that as well. All right, how many people compost? We're in the land of Don Davis. All right, I don't know how many folks remember the Don, but as a kid, Don Davis was a master gardener over here, I believe, and he was a composting rascal. And he taught people how to compost, and he had one of the most amazing voices that I used to try to mimic, but I hurt my throat doing it. He was a cool guy. We still actually have a little memorial stone for him over in our gardens at Overton. But anyway, composting is something that should be wildly popular. All right? What is the problem with it? The problem is that we want to watch a video that is 30 seconds long, not 3 minutes long, and certainly not 30 minutes long. All right? We become less and less patient as a culture, as a society, and this takes some patience. It doesn't take as much as people think if you do it right, but it takes some patience. And the point of composting is this: you have two categories of ingredients. You got green and you got brown. All right? Green, if you put it out and it sits there in water and it kind of composts for a week or two and it stinks, that's a green ingredient. All right? So kitchen scraps, even grass clippings, pretty much anything that is green, but it doesn't even have to be green for it to have that. The point is, green materials are those that have high nitrogen ratios. All right? Brown ingredients are oftentimes brown: dead leaves, cardboards, even wood chips that are super finely ground. And that's really one of the keys to composting in the first place, is everything needs to be really finely ground. If you put big old pieces of stuff out there, you're going to wind up waiting for a long time for these things to compost. The other ways that compost really needs to happen is the pile always needs to be damp. All right? Moist but not wet. You don't want it sitting there rain wet. And you've got to have air moving through there. And you realize that that pile sitting there, you say, how in the world do you get air moving through there? Well, you turn it. Turn it often. And I don't know if we had any Dave Letterman fans here. As a kid, I would watch little Dave Letterman. And he used to do this thing, and I realized after the fact he was making fun of me, but it's okay. And he would talk about the compost tumbler. The compost tumbler. And he would make a big deal out of that, like that was some kind of thing that only people who were up at 1 o'clock in the morning that would call that 900 number would get it. The fact is that I've coveted a compost tumbler since I was about 12 years old. And anyway, he would talk about that. The compost tumbler was an important ingredient in making compost. Why? Because you can just sit there and turn that wheel and keep it nicely aerated. All right, so air, moisture, and really small bits. All right, and you will wind up with some materials in 6, 10, 12, 15, 24, 52 weeks. I mean, it kind of depends on what you got out there. If you get this, let me correct this. This carbon and nitrogen ratio of 30 to 1, right? That would be like 30 parts brown to 1 part green. That's way too much. That particular area, that is going to sit there and stall for a long time. So 2, 3, 4 parts nitrogen to 1 part carbon would be a really good thing. That way that thing breaks down and you kind of manipulate it depending on what's actually happening. All right? So brown materials: leaves, straw, sawdust. Notice sawdust is high carbon. So if you've got a material that's way too green, put a little sawdust on it. Green materials: vegetable peeling, grass clippings, fresh manure, and coffee grounds. You go over across the pond and you tell them, I can make compost too. Compost, that's one of my favorite English words. All right, let's move on. This says what? This says that pile's got to get hot. All right, and as it gets hot, you need to be turning it. It is an exothermic reaction. The point is that on a cool morning, your compost pile, if it's still working, is going to be giving off some steam. All right. And so when that's happening, that's a good thing, but just realize that you're going to need to turn it in a few days to continue that process. There you go. Some steam, letting off steam is a good thing. All right, you got a lot of ways you build these things. Notice that this particular lid is important. Why? Because yes, there are some times we get rain. It's been a little while, but we can get rain, and therefore you need to be able to actually control how much moisture that pile is getting. Did I mention you should get a soil test? All right. At some point in time in this process, soil tests are a really good thing. And the reason I'm bringing this up here is because as you're going through the process of making that compost and everything, there may be parts of your yard that need more help than others, parts of your vegetable garden that need more help than others. And so you utilize that compost very judiciously. All right. Fertilizers, right? We got to fertilize our gardens. Why? Because as we are preparing this vegetable garden and realizing that, hey man, this thing is not long for this world, right? It's not going to be here forever. It's going to be here very short term. It's not a fruit garden, right? It's not peaches or plums or pears or something. Pears are going to be there for 100 years maybe. They were talking about tomatoes that are here today and gone tomorrow. So what is the point? We want to produce as much as possible. All right. So as you do so, depending on the type of soil you've got, a pound or two per 100 square foot of. You notice you put different levels of nitrogen in there if you've got real sandy soil. So if you've got a really loose soil, that nitrogen is probably not going to stay in there very long if this is a fast release nitrogen source. And so a 5-10-10 is going to be a whole lot more ecologically friendly versus a clay soil, which would hold on to loads more nitrogen. So you can use a 10-20-10. You can use a complete fertilizer, or you can, one that's a triple 13. That's oftentimes the most popular because it's just more simple. But the fact is that phosphorus generally a lot of times stays in the soil. The middle number, all right, we're all familiar with this. 3 numbers on the bag of fertilizer: nitrogen, P2O5, and K2O. We'll just say phosphorus and potassium. And phosphorus oftentimes stays in the soil until it's actually taken out of there by some sort of biomass, by a plant. Whereas nitrogen and potassium will sort of wash away. And so we want to be careful with that. But we also want to make sure that, it's not sustainable. So somebody said, well, that's not very sustainable if all your nitrogen and stuff washes away. That's true. But if you don't fertilize enough and you don't make a good garden with what you're actually going out there to do, that's not sustainable either. All right? So if we're going to go out there and do it, we want to make sure that we're producing it the way that we need to produce that. Organic versus inorganic. I'm not here to talk about what you ought to do. However you want to do it, you can do it. Just realize that oftentimes fertilizing organically is more difficult because it's just not about going down and picking up a bag. Oftentimes, it's more about, hey, producing your own, or somebody says, hey, I've got some manure. The question oftentimes comes to my mind, well, how much nitrogen is in this manure? I don't know. I don't know. You don't know. We don't know. But the fact is that if you're comfortable with that, that's a good thing, then keep going. All right, inorganic fertilizers are oftentimes much more convenient, but if you've got a problem with those inorganic fertilizers, I don't have a problem with that either. So however you want to do it, just realize that you're Scots. Are they Scots anymore? Your yard is hungry for it. I can't do an Irish, Scottish thing. It's hungry, feed them, Your tomatoes are hungry, feed them. They're always hungry. They're like teenagers. Organic fertilizers, as I mentioned, we don't need to go through this because I already mentioned all of this, but the fact is that they can be bulky, they can be sort of difficult to know exactly what's in them. Inorganic fertilizers are oftentimes quite convenient, but again, they can cause some consternation for the person that's putting them out, depending on their viewpoint. And so I don't care how it is you fertilize your garden, just realize that you need to fertilize it. Now, if you fertilize your garden right, let's just say you had a area out there, and you're going to grow tomatoes and you're going to grow peppers, right? And you started tilling yesterday, and you started putting fertilizer down today. Is that good or bad? I'd say it's not real good, right? Because you're fertilizing soil. That fertilizer, a lot of that material that you're putting out there is not going to be there when your plants get planted, because you don't need to be planting tomatoes and peppers right now. I had a customer one time come by, he said, I want 14 of your very best flats and tomatoes.
What?
I said, sir, you do not. He said, yes I do. February the 7th. February the 7th, it was freezing cold outside that day, I remember. I said, sir, you do not. We went about 5 minutes through this whole process. And I wasn't going to win, I could tell. He says, I want you to know something. And he points to his cap. And his cap says something LP. I don't remember what it was. He said, this is my LP company. He says, if it freezes, I can afford to buy 7 more flats. I said, okay, all right. I understand. I got it. Where would you like for me to put this? So the fact is that now is not the time. You want to make sure that I would try to be as conservative as possible, realizing that the person that plants the first tomato is not necessarily the person that's going to win the prize for the first and biggest tomato. All right? Oftentimes, in fact, that's just the direct opposite. All right, complete versus incomplete. Believe it or not, I'm showing you a slide that I don't love because to me, complete fertilizer has all 3 numbers represented and incomplete fertilizer only has, well, there's a 0 in there somewhere. This slide says just a few things that are a little different than that. That's my story and I'm sticking to it. Hey, I'm the presenter today, so let's go with me. Complete fertilizer, all right. None of these guys are. They all have a 0 in here. So these are incomplete fertilizers in my estimation. So 1313 would be a complete fertilizer. 4600 would be an incomplete fertilizer. 2010-20 would be a complete fertilizer. All right. Now, why would we care about the differences in those numbers? And the reason is because if we're trying to produce a plant that's got lots and lots of vegetative growth, lots and lots of foliage, then we need a plant fertilizer that's got a lot of nitrogen. If we want to produce more flowers and more fruit, then we can back off on the nitrogen because we want the plant to produce less foliage and more flowers. All right? Now, the problem is that we sort of try to do both with our tomatoes, and they oftentimes will allow us to do that. And we'll talk about that in just a second. All right, raised beds. We already said that there's loads of people doing it, so I probably should have even focused on this a bit more. But realizing that there's the ability, and I know this isn't vegetables, by the way, I got it. But that forever we've been growing in the ground, and people are good at it. All right. So if you're growing in the ground and you say, "Hey, I don't know why all these people are raising their beds," you don't have to. You can still do great. But if you want to, hey, this is a little bit. That's not so far to bend over. Right? That's a good deal. And the problem is that the first year or two, you're trying to figure out where is all the water going to go? All right, how's the water going to get out of here? And what is the stuff that I should put in here? Do I have the right soil in here? So a lot of times the first year or two that you're raising beds, you don't wind up with the greatest of gardens. But stick with it because it's really quite worth it. All right? This is the way I used to make raised beds. Actually, used landscape timbers. They're 8 foot long. They make nice 4-foot end walls. And when you cut them in half, and then 8-foot sections. And that's enough for you to really grow enough to make somebody mad. All right, as my daddy used to say. But you can grow quite a bit in an 8x4 section. These are Vigo containers. So depending on how much money you want to spend or what aesthetic you're looking for in your garden, you can certainly utilize lots of different. Now listen, I'm not stuffing for any companies. But we use Berger for a long, long time. Daddy loved Berger, peat moss, and those soils. They come straight out of Canada. We always had a French-Canadian driver that would come down and bring it to us in January. And Daddy said, "Son, are you ready for football?" And I said, "Well, not yet." He said, "Well, you fixing to get ready." All right? Because I get out there, and those bales of peat moss weighed about 800 pounds because they're frozen solid. All right? And the guy would always say, I can't do a French-Canadian accent either, but you don't have a pallet, Jack, or you don't have... He said, "No, but I got a 14-year-old. Yeah. So here I go. And this is about as good a soil as you're going to be able to grow in. But functionally, if you've got an area like this, that's no trouble. But if you're trying to grow in the ground, or even lots and lots of raised beds, this can get fairly expensive. All right? So compost is your friend. Organic matter is your friend. What is the answer? Organic. All right, I can leave. All right, Miracle Grow potting mix, I got no problem with it, but just realize that a lot of times popularity doesn't always mean it's the best product, whatever that might be. We've already seen this. All right, raised beds. You say you're going really fast. I am. I've got a lot to get through. Hey, this looks like me. I'm not going to lie to you. I was never going to win the award for Gardener of the Year. I was often going to win the award for Laziest Gardener of the Year. All right, so what I would do is not even this. I would go to the place that was down the road, and I would buy a bale of peat moss or some sort of a soil substrate, and I would cut 3 holes in that bale and put being a plant in there. And you say, well, that's really expensive. Yeah, I got it, but I didn't have to go buy anything. I had raised beds right there. So loads of fun. You can do the same thing with hay. And, well, there you go. That's what I used to do. All right, here's my 3 holes. Look at that. All right. Drainage, water holding capacity, border material, safe to use, no railroad ties. All right, we used to have a creosote plant down in Tenhall, and we have no effects. Not a problem at all. Everything's fine. But anyway, I don't think I want to eat that tomato that comes straight out of that thing. All right, decision on what kind of soil you're going to make. Point is that number 1, number 2, and number 4, they all have to do with organic matter. All right, so that's a good thing for us as well. Why choose a seed versus a transplant? We've got loads of people here who come out to Overton and they seed things. Why do we do that? Because that's what they'll send us. All right, we're okay with that. Why would we choose a seed versus a transplant? Somebody got it? Control? Okay. You can get the variety I want. It doesn't cost me $1 million.
Yeah.
All right. All right. That's a good deal. I can get 73 different varieties of tomatoes. By the way, if you do that, you have a problem. It's a good problem, but you have a problem. And I used to grow 40 or 50 varieties of tomatoes for my customers, and I got all excited about it. And I would sell still the same 6 or 7 that people really do. All right, so I would get too excited about it too. I have a problem as well. If you're going out there and it's mid to late April and you're trying to catch up, grow your garden by way of transplants. If you're excited about it right now and you got time, grow some seed. All right, you can do it. Now I have a lot of people that would come up and say, I spent $4,700 on seed this year. So how many plants you can buy for $4,700? I can load you down. That doesn't matter. We're good. You keep saying, why did you do this? I don't know. Don't worry about it. It felt good. Last night as I was putting all this together, this all felt right. But it doesn't need to happen right now. Save seed or not? How many people are saving seeds? All right. What do you save seed of?
Green peppers.
Green peppers? What about tomatoes, though? All right. Heirloom tomatoes. Heirloom tomatoes, save seed. Hybrid tomatoes, don't save seed. All right. You get an inferior product almost always when you save seed of a hybrid tomato. You don't get what you started with. All right. And so BHN 589 is a great hybrid tomato. I'll talk about that in just a second. Cherokee Purple is my favorite heirloom tomato, and maybe my favorite tomato altogether, just in terms of flavor. All right, what do? I save seed of Cherokee Purple. I do not save seed of BHN 589. All right, and it's almost always a good thing if the thing's got a number in it. All right, like if it sounds like something that came out of a medical trial or something like that, then you probably don't want to save those seed. If it sounds like Cherokee Purple or Majestic Mountain or whatever, oftentimes those are savable. All right, look at that. How do you do it? That's not really what this is about, but it's okay. I had these in here and I said, you know what, this would be good. Take your seed, you will wash them, all right, sort of macerate them, put them onto a good cloth, paper towel, all right, and as you do that then, they'll dry out over a day or two, and then you store them in a cool, dry place until it's time to go out there and plant them, all right, so that's really, really complicated, but a lot of people don't know how to do it. All right, we're going to skip past this. Don't get frustrated with me, please. It's a little bit of ADD left over from my dad. All right, we've already talked about this. Make a garden plan. You've got to do it. You've got to have your ideal site. This has already been discussed. When is the best time to start a garden? Well, the best time depends. That's always my favorite scientific answer.
Yesterday.
I don't know. It's still going to be cold, right? We're still going to get some cold. All right? Now, you know what you're supposed to say after you tell me that. My elbow's been hurt. Yeah, we're still going to get some cold. You know? All right. So, vegetable garden is possible in most of Texas at any time of the year. Not tomatoes and peppers, broccoli. There's loads of things. You can grow lettuces and things like this, all kinds of cold crops. Cool season vegetables in fall, winter, and spring. And we don't often take advantage of this, but many people do, and when they do, they're marveled at by those around. Warm season crops, late spring, summer, and into early fall. One of the banes of my existence were people trying to come and buy the tomatoes and the peppers at the same time. All right, tomatoes are a little bit more okay with some cooler temperatures than your peppers are. Your peppers can sit out there and say, "What are you doing to me?"
Right.
You know, I want it to be hot. And then somebody would come and buy okra, you know, in like March. This is cruel and inhumane. So Texas has a lot of different climate zones, and you know, if you're talking all of Texas, that can really kind of come into play. But for us here, I had customers that said, I used to buy your daddy's tomatoes. One time I did it on the 1st of March, and I planted another set on the 31st of March. And he said there was 1 day difference in the harvest between the 1st of March and the 31st of March. Now that's 1 year, you never know. But the fact is that your patience is almost always rewarded. All right, so get geared up, get excited. You know, you can taste the salsa right now. The tomato sandwich, right? Miracle Whip. I don't like Miracle Whip, but I know you do. And so it's good. But when you taste that thing, you know, keep it in your mind, keep dreaming about it until we get to that place where that 10-day forecast has got no more cool in there whatsoever. You know, we get down to that, you know, we want to stay in that 45 degree range. We don't want to dip down much further than that. It's not going to hurt the tomatoes, but they're just going to kind of sit there. All right, the other thing that I would say about this, and I've been talking about tomatoes until you drop, and I still enjoy that. The fact is that when you're choosing varieties, it's important to consider heat, right? Because what you're going to wind up with a heat-tolerant variety versus a non-heat tolerant variety is oftentimes about 10 days of extra harvest, maybe 2 weeks. All right, that doesn't sound like much. That's a lot of tomatoes if you're still legitimate, right? So you go out there and you get your 2 weeks of extra tomatoes, and that's a good thing. The point is that when that nighttime temperature, the daytime temperature can be whatever it is it wants to be. As long as you're keeping water on those tomatoes, you're all right. But when that nighttime temperature gets up above 79, 80, 81, those tomatoes are going to quit making. All right? Why? Because they're wore out. They never get a chance to rest. It's like me. Last night, no sleep at the house. Right? This is why that I'm all wired up. I drank about 8 cups of coffee this morning. This is me as excited as I get. And so anyway, that's something you really want to consider. All right. Warm season crops, you know this. We already talked about that. Typical cool season stuff, we already talked about this. All right, we'll deal with some of that later. Average day, no, it doesn't matter. We're in East Texas where we're supposed to be. All right, here you go. This is something that comes straight from Keith Hansen. Thank you for being here, Mr. Hansen. All right. I'm glad I didn't get it from that new extension agent. I'm so tired of him, I don't know what to do. But this right here is a nice vegetable garden planting guide. Things have not changed since Mr. Hansen put this together for you guys. And so incredible resources for you guys on the website. And so check that out, and that'll give you a real good leg up on your competition. Because let's be honest, your neighbors are your competition. We all know that. You want to flip that again? All right. Okay. And this is another, this comes from the Anderson County Master Gardeners, but the fact is that these things fluctuate a bit from county to county, but if you find something from 3, 4, 5 counties away, it's still probably going to be useful for you. All right, row covers, we'll skip this really, because the fact is that, yeah, can you be growing tomatoes all year long? You absolutely can. All right, those things, they're not so sensitive to light. They just want a nice warm place, and they'll produce. There are other crops that absolutely are sensitive to light. So you cannot be growing them all year long. We don't do a lot with peppers and things like that. But the fact is that there are certain crops you can. But this is more for, hey, I want to do this now. I got so excited, that King guy, he talked so eloquently about these things that I just want to go and do it. And so I need a row cover at least. A little greenhouse or a high tunnel would be even better. And now you can just go out there and garden, and all your neighbors will watch with saliva coming out of the corners of their mouth. All right? The other thing is that we often use these as tomato cages, but they can also then be used as frost cloth covers. All right? So if we have a frost coming up and we got tomatoes that are ready to go already, guess what? Put a frost cloth cover over there. It's not going to help you if it's 20 degrees outside, but if it's 29, that's a good thing to do. All right? Plastic mulch, this is what we do a lot in Overton, but I don't think anybody here is probably going to be growing on that sort of level, so we'll just kind of skip it. But the fact is that that's a load of fun if you've got 400 foot of row and you don't want to weed a whole bunch. That's a really good way to go. All right, choosing good varieties. Oh, I got 6 minutes. Incredible. All right, these resources are there for you. I don't have time to go through all of the different ones and give you good ideas on that. But that's really the fun of gardening, for yourself. So do check those things out on like Ag and Horticulture, realizing again that we've got loads of different, and it's not just about tomatoes, folks, but hey, let's be honest, that's important. 86% of people garden buy tomatoes. Determinate variety of flowers and fruits at one time, all right? Oftentimes, most of their fruit given up at a singular time. Indeterminate, they're going to keep on fruiting. Keep on fruiting, oftentimes keep on growing. You say my tomato's 15 foot tall, probably an indeterminate variety, all right? And you may want to consider that as you go along. VFTN, you see that on the label, that's verticillium fusarium tobacco mosaic virus and nematode resistance. That's a good thing to have. All right, patio, that's a smaller tomato that we can put in a pot. Oftentimes you don't know whether your tomatoes are grafted or not, so we'll kind of move on past that. If you get into tomato grafting, it's another level of, affliction. Blossom end rot, never forget, first time I had blossom end rot, I had to admit, I was like 24 years old, I should have known already, but I called Daddy, I said, Daddy, this thing turned black on the bottom end. He started snickering, and then he said, you got blossom end rot, and I learned a quick lesson, but the fact is that will absolutely just break your heart when you see a beautiful crop, and you have a calcium deficiency. Calcium deficiency can be corrected by, a lot of people put your eggshells and different things down in the planting hole. I never tell people not to do that sort of thing. But there are sprays and there are different fertilizers you can use to try to solve that problem. The other thing I would say about that is water properly. If you have loads of water at one time and then you let them get real dry, and then you get loads of water and then you let them get real dry, those are really good candidates for blossom end rot. All right, so it's a watering issue as well. So be very careful about that. All right, people used to come out to the nursery all the time and say, I don't want none of them GMO tomatoes. And I said, well, I don't have any of those GMO tomatoes. I have hybrids. And they said, well, that's what I mean. Those aren't the same thing. A hybrid is where I take pollen from one plant, put it onto another one, and because of that, then I can produce these seeds that are consistent. GMO would be something where I'm taking a gene out of something, it could be a tomato, but generally it's some other transgenic crop. And then you put it into another. Now the fact is that over the last 5 to 6 years, there are a number of GMO tomatoes. I've never had one, but there are those out there. And in the future, I'm sure that's something that you're going to have to deal with. But in reality, realize that those heirloom crops are open pollinated. The hybrid crops are not open pollinated, but those are much different. Hybrid tomatoes are not GMO tomatoes. Okay, those are two different things. All right, what beautiful tomatoes those are. That's King's Nursery. One thing I want you to know, if you go out there going to go and buy your new tomato crop, look at the base of that thing. Look for a purple flush on the bottom of that plant. If I see a nice purple flush on the bottom of that plant, I know a couple things. Number one, I know that it's been grown properly. I know that soil substrate is at the right level, right? I see that purple flush. It's a really good thing. And so I look for that. I look for nice green, fresh foliage up on top. And none of the brown, nothing that shows that it hadn't been watered, wasn't over-fertilized or under-fertilized or anything like that, so just look for good. And then, of course, start looking at things. This is the Champion 2 tomato, huge tomato. This thing's not going to win any beauty contest, but there's my Cherokee Purple, all right, that I mentioned to you. It looks like my uncle that's got that dimple in his chin. But anyway, a lot of people don't want core in their tomatoes, so what I'm saying is look for the right varieties. These guys are all, except for Cherokee Purple on the left-hand side, these are all hybrid varieties. DHN 589, 602, those are really good, super producers. Champion 2, it makes huge tomatoes that taste quite good, but oftentimes don't produce quite as many as others. Florida 91 is extremely heat tolerant. All right, bred for that kind of hot, humid thing that you can see down in Florida. Jet Star, I saw it making fruit in July in College Station one year. That sold me on it. Celebrity is a fantastic gold standard tomato. If you've never grown tomatoes before, go Celebrity. Cherokee Carbon, Tasty Lee, these were all things that I tried out one time, and they're kind of fun. Paul Robinson and Cherokee Purple are both heirloom varieties, and Paul Robinson's got particularly good flavor. So what I'm saying is talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, and there's loads of stuff. All right.